Welcome to the Atomic Mommy Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Pangaro, and every week I talk to special guests about everything parenting to help you on your parenting journey. Be sure to like and subscribe this podcast so you can get notified whenever I publish a new episode. Now let's get to it. Today's special guest is Maria Golden. She is an educator, reading specialist, and mother of 3 young children. Her goal is to educate and empower parents to teach their children to read through play. You can find her on Facebook and Instagram at Growing in Literacy and visit her website, www.growinginliteracy.com. Now let's get to it. Thank you so much, Maria, for being a guest on my show. So I know we spoke many months ago. I'm really sorry. I know I got sick and the whole dilemma of being sick with COVID and then the kids with the strep and the flu was like nonstop. So I apologize. But I am so happy we finally get to be on the show together. This is exciting. So one of the things that you talked to me about, like I said many moons ago, was growing in literacy. And I am such a huge advocate for my daughters, all 4 of them since they were like 3, about reading to them, having them read, making them read on their own. It's a huge thing. I know that literacy can probably encompass more than just reading, but for me, that's how, I sort of understood it. So talk to me about what it is you do with literacy and how you use that with kids.
Yeah, so my business is Growing in Literacy. And what I try to do is I work with parents of preschoolers and young children to help them build those foundational skills that they need to become readers in the future. So I spent many years in the classroom. I'm a reading specialist as well. And the first graders that I worked with, many of them already in first grade were struggling with reading. And first grade is a huge year for that. They have to make it through 7 levels of books within a year. And it was just overwhelming. And when I got my reading specialist license, it kind of dawned on me that many of these kids didn't have the basic skills that they needed. And not through anybody's fault, is they just weren't taught them. They were expected to know them when they came to kindergarten. And there were little missing building blocks that they didn't have. So when we were trying to read them books and trying to sound out words, they were missing some key components, which made it hard. And they got frustrated and they hated to read and they'd cry when I'd bring them over to the table. So trying to help parents know what it is that they could be working on in a very simple way to just create that foundation for them. So when they go to school or if they're homeschooled, that they have those foundational skills to build on in the future.
Okay, I see what you're doing. So something that you do is really important, foundational skills. That's something that a lot of us as parents tend to miss because we're so bombarded with all of these homework assignments, all of these paperworks that we have to submit. And a lot of us work, full time, not virtually like I do. So we don't always get the chance to know what foundational skills we might be missing. What are some of the ones that we could be missing right from the get-go?
So one of them, rhyming. I did teach 4K for a while, and there would be assessments with rhyming, and the students couldn't even recognize what was a rhyme and what was not a rhyme. Letter sounds, letter recognition, alliteration, this first letter of the word being the same. So like Silly Sally sat by the seashore, knowing that same sound, the repetition there. Their ability to recall and retell books, so having conversations about stories so they start to notice patterns. And sometimes the simplest things like having a love of learning and learning to read, like finding reading fun is something that parents can do that is so very simple that will make the rest of their reading journey so much easier because they already think, reading's fun. I'm okay. You want to call me over for a book? That sounds like fun to me. And they've already got a positive outlook on reading as a whole. So those are some of the ideas.
So that makes sense. So I'll tell you a little bit about my third daughter. So when she was about 3 and a half, she showed interest in reading books. She was opening up the books that her big sisters had. She wanted to know what the words said, but she struggled with wanting to learn. So when she figured out, and I'm telling you, it's like 3 and a half, 4 years old. when she figured out that she actually had to learn some of the things, like the letters, letter recognition, rhyming, she got frustrated very early on. And it took me maybe about a year to get her really, really heavily involved in wanting to read. And what I did, now I could be wrong because my parenting style is very different from everyone else's. So what I did was I just reinforced it as an activity we did every day, about 15 to 20 minutes, whatever she could tolerate. Some days were 5 minutes, some days were 20 minutes, where we just sat and we tried to read. And I would show her the letters, tell her what the letters sounded like, and had her repeat some of them back to me. She didn't love that we had to do it every day, but it really set her up for kindergarten and first grade, and even now, where her level of reading is much farther along than many other kids. So when it comes to how you teach and what you recommend for parents, regardless of whether or not I was right or wrong, is that something that you recommend for parents to do with kids, to sit with them daily?
Yes, I do recommend daily discussion around literacy topics or reading topics. What I am a proponent for, because it seems to be easier for parents and more enjoyable for the kids, is a play-based learning approach. So everything that I do through my work is play-based, which can really be integrated throughout the regular flow of your day. So something as simple as when you're at the grocery store, I have 3 kids and I do this all the time with them. Once they start learning the letters of their names, and when we're going grocery shopping and they're just driving me nuts because they want everything off the shelves and he touched me and they looked at me wrong, the whole thing. I say, hey, we should go on a letter hunt. See if you can find the letter M somewhere. The M's at the beginning of your name. Can you find M? Or all of a sudden, they're done. And they're looking and they're finding, oh, I found the M. Oh, I found another one. And you're reinforcing those letters, reinforcing letter recognition, but it's also just being, fit into the daily routine of your life and saves you some sanity. Another one of my favorite things is when we're waiting in the line to check out, because some checkout lines take forever, singing nursery rhymes, telling poems, telling silly stories. Usually get a few looks from people around us, but at least my kids aren't screaming and they're not throwing a fit. Typically, right? That's not always the case. But singing those songs, doing nursery rhymes, enforcing those literacy concepts while you're just mixing it in with your already busy daily life. So yes, I definitely think daily instruction, though it doesn't always have to be direct instruction. Some kids are okay with that. Some kids, especially if they're busybodies, just don't want to sit still. They want to be interacting and moving. And I have a few of those.
See, that's a really unique way to do that, because I never thought about doing it at the grocery store, like letter hunting. That's a very unique way to do that. So I give you props for that, because I'll tell you right now, it's a supermarket. I want to get in and I want to get out, so like as quickly as possible. But that is very creative that you came up with that. And it makes me wonder, are there other sort of creative ways you can integrate that, sort of maybe at the playground or maybe at a play date?
Yeah, playground, great place. There are so many things to see and do when you're out and about, on a walk, at a park, at the zoo. Vocabulary is a great thing to work on when you're out and about, especially those who are building their vocabularies more, 2 to 4, maybe 5. Talking about the things that you see. Oh, I see a bird. And what do you hear the bird say? Oh, tweet, tweet. I see a big dump truck. What do you see? Is that truck bigger or smaller than this other truck? Trying to have some engagement with those vocabulary terms. Rhyming is always fun to kind of put in wherever you go. My son went through a phase where he was rhyming everything. So I would tell him to go do something like, dude, go sit in your chair for a little bit. Oh, chair, bear, chair, bear. I was like, yes, okay, yes, chair, bear. They do rhyme, but please go sit in your chair. So we just integrated everywhere. And I, not that I can recall, never actually sat them down and taught them those things. They were just kind of integrated throughout what we were doing. So when we're out and about in the car too, like driving to play dates, driving to the park, I would have them look for things out the window. That's a great way to do numbers too. Like count how many signs you see, count how many cows. I live in the Midwest, cows everywhere. So count the cows, tell me what letters you see. See if we can find the letters of the alphabet. Telling stories to each other while we're in the car, or just, again, just simple ways that we integrate those literacy concepts without any pre-planning on my part and without them getting bored. I'm interacting with them and putting those important concepts in place without making a big to-do of it.
So, you brought up numbers. So would you say that numbers is also part of literacy and growing that?
Yes, I would, because at least the visual concept of knowing and recognizing the numbers. And when you get into the older grades, you have to be able to read word problems in order to solve them. You need to be able to comprehend them, to pick out words that are essential to understanding the word problem. So there is definitely a lot of overlap between math and literacy.
So that's a very interesting thing, because a lot of times most parents steer clear of math at home because, especially now with this whole core curriculum, it can be very difficult. And I don't want to tell you how much I hate it, but I definitely hate it. I hate core curriculum, especially when it came out with my older daughters. And, they had started out on the old curriculum, simplify math. And then they were like maybe in second grade and it switched, and they were, they struggled so much. And even now that my daughters have gone through the whole school system with core curriculum, they still struggle with it. And then they'll bring their assignments home and I'm just like, don't ask me. We got to ask your teacher. We got to ask your teacher. I don't know. Mommy grew up in the 80s. It's not like this, And so I find that personally, I struggle with giving them literacy in math in the way that they can. Now, not so much with word problems, because like you said, word problems, involves words. And so I'm pretty good at helping them pick out, like the words and, or, things that are going to help them sort of define how the math problem needs to be solved. But when it comes to the numbers, I just don't. So for parents like me who are terrible at math and hate core curriculum, what would you give us in terms of tips or tools that we can sort of help our kids?
What's interesting is I have a completely different outlook on the math curriculum, and it's only because, well, I was trained in it, so that helped. But when I was trained, I'm only trained up to a certain point, so you might be talking about things that are different. But it opened up a whole world of math to me that was never there. I could never look at two numbers and add them together in my head. I was using my fingers exclusively, like, adding some things. But now I don't know, it just like completely opened up my mind where and never before have I been able to do math faster than my husband. And within the past 5 years, I was like, oh, I got this because I can, add the hundreds together and the tens. So for me, it made sense. And I was like, I wish I was taught math and I wouldn't have this way. And then I wouldn't have hated math so much. But for parents who haven't been trained in that, and this is kind of time consuming, but to kind of figure out what the curriculum is and any materials that are sent home from the teachers, to look it over and see if you can understand the process that's being used to help your child. The teacher is the resource for asking those questions because they know the curriculum best. And so supporting them in any way. Now that's easier said than done because parents are busy, teachers are busy, but the teacher is going to be the one to understand that most. And any tools that they have in their toolbox, like even a YouTube video that goes through how to do division in the method that they're choosing, ask if they have any resources so that you can view them. They might have them and just don't share them because they don't think anybody wants to know. But if you ask, they probably have something to share with you.
That's how I've found in my experience. Most of the teachers are very willing to help. Obviously, they are very, very, very busy. I will definitely attest to that. But a lot of them do make time even for after-school tutoring in that aspect, because as the kids get older, having those foundational skills, like you mentioned before, is so lucrative to them doing well in the older grades. My one daughter now is in 5th grade, and she used to hate math. When she was in third grade, the math got harder and the reading got harder. And she used to say reading is easy, because obviously I worked with her, but math was hard because I didn't work with her on the level that I probably should have. And so I reached out to her teacher, and her teacher started sitting with her. And after a year of tutoring, she started to love math. So I get what you're saying is if you're taught in that way to understand math, you're going to have a better understanding and maybe even start to have a love for it. It's really like unique to itself.
Yeah, it is. And what's hard is because it is such a complete reversal of how we used to do things. Students are getting, you're taught a certain way at school. Then you go home and parents are like, I don't know. Let's just teach you the right answers. I'll show you my way. This worked for me. I've used it for years. And then all of a sudden their brain is just completely discombobulated. I don't know the answer to that question or like the answer to that problem because the way math has been taught is so different now. And there just needs to be some cohesiveness.
Yeah.
Maybe in 30 years, hopefully if they keep the same math curriculum, who knows, going to change it again, then it'll be easier for students because their parents will know. But now it's hard because it's two different worlds.
It is hard. So I have this question for you. I know that reading to children at a young age and giving them that foundation really helps their education in the future and helps their success, right? Now, when you combine reading literacy and math literacy together, what does that do for a child's success, not just in school, but also in home and in the future?
So there's a lot of research out there that there's student success early in school, literacy and math, is an indicator for their success later in life and their ability to handle problems and conflicts. It's somehow all interrelated in there. They're more likely to graduate high school, have graduate education after high school, get higher paying jobs, are more likely to get raises because they have the vocabulary and the confidence to ask and work for those. And there's studies that follow children from I think it's typically third grade. Third grade seems to be the indicator for everything. That if they're performing at or above grade level at third grade, that they have much more success in the future, have higher graduation rates, higher income rates as they enter the workforce. And while that doesn't mean that if they're below grade level in third grade, that they won't be successful in the future, but there's just a strong indicator of success starting at third grade and their proficiency levels at that point.
Wow, so it truly is a proponent to project how the future could potentially go for a child. That's amazing.
Yeah, and why it's so important for these foundational skills, in kindergarten, pre-K, kindergarten, first and second grade, is once you start in third grade, we transition from learning to read and to reading to learn. So at that point, third, fourth grade, they should no longer need necessarily to learn how to read. They should be able to read well enough that they are now reading in order to learn new topics and expand further into their depth of knowledge. So that's a really important transitional time for kids, which is why I'm such a huge proponent of those early foundational skills, so that I would have fifth graders coming to me for reading support, and they're still learning to read. So when they're reading something, they're not comprehending it and learning yet. They're still trying to read the text. And you're missing out on so much learning at that point.
So let me ask you this question. I know that you offer growing and literacy skills for, children and parents to help their children, right? What grade level do you go up to?
Right now, I'm focusing on preschool. That's my main focus. I hope to expand as far as I can, as far as parents feel they need help. I've been dreaming big. I would love to help all parents of all children who are learning to read, reading to learn, having struggles at all levels of reading development. But right now, I'm currently focusing on the preschool age, I'd say 2 to 5, 2 to 5 year old.
I mean, that's a lucrative age right there. I mean, most kids are very interested in reading at that time.
Right. They have this basic love of reading at that age. And they're sponges. They just soak up everything. So it's a great time to kind of dive in and teach those skills and nurture their love of reading really early.
So let me ask you this. Do you do this in home or virtually or both?
I virtually right now, and I make resources for parents to use. I'm currently working on a program to teach parents the reading progression, the specific skills that children need to have to be successful readers, and not only teach them what those skills are, but also how to teach them and give them resources, again, that are play-based to practice all those skills, give them an idea. I'm getting excited, so I'm stumbling over my words.
Don't worry.
Give them an idea of how they can implement this easily within their life, that they don't have to carve out an hour of their day when they've got, work and they have to get groceries and they have play dates and they have family obligations and all this other stuff, that it can be really simple and easy, maybe 15 minutes of hands-on time or even less.
Okay, so that makes sense because I'm a very busy mom. I have my girls in cheerleading, and if I'm not at a cheering practice, we're going to a game, and if we're not doing that, we're going down to where my other daughter goes to college in Delaware. So for someone like me, and I have a second grader now, so she's out of the preschool years, but she still loves to read, and she's integrating now into the older kid books, the chapter books, and things like that. So for someone like me, having you when they were younger would have been very helpful because I was a stay-at-home mom, but when I started my business, my youngest was still, I would say, kindergarten, and she still very much needed those foundational skills to be reinforced on a daily basis. So how does a parent like me reach out to you, and how do we get, set up with you so that we can start right away?
Yeah, so you can find me at growinginliteracy.com. I also have a Facebook page and Instagram at Growing in Literacy. So those are the main platforms I'm on right now. And if you sign up for my email list, I give out weekly activities based on a reading skill for free so that parents can start diving into these topics right away. So every week I'm sending out a new literacy activity that is play-based and focused on a specific literacy skill.
Now, do parents have to, when they go on your website, do they have to have their child there to take a, assessment test? Or is this just something that they go in and they say, my child is so-and-so age, this is the stuff I need?
Yeah, they could just come in and no assessment needed. I'm not providing assessments right now, just providing the resources that they need to help build those foundational skills.
Yeah, that's a good thing because I would imagine a lot of parents not having time to even have their child sit down to do the assessment. So I think that's actually fair. So, I love what you do. And I have one final question for you because this is important for parents who, there are these parents who really want their kids to excel academically. So they prepare well in advance. We're talking like 10 years in advance, right? So what would you say to those parents on how they could not only reinforce, but keep their child's passion for literacy ignited well into middle school, high school? What would you say to them?
I'd say might sound weird, but lay off the pressure a little.
Good one.
Kids need a little boost. They need a little bit of pressure. But I've seen kids come to my classroom who have a lot of parental force. Like, you need to know this, and I'm going to sit you down with flashcards, and we're going to sit every day and make sure you know your words and you know your letters. And those are, unfortunately, sometimes the kids that just hate it.
Yeah.
And they don't want to do it because it becomes just a chore, and there's not that foundational love. So the foundation of reading being fun and exciting, making reading something that's just natural and not something that's forced. So if they see you reading, if they see if you read to them or with them, if something I do is I bring books to doctor's appointments. It's just books are a natural part of life. We have books in the car. We bring books to the doctor's office. If I know they're going to have to sit for a while, instead of bringing an iPad, even though iPads have come in handy before, but I'll bring a stack of books and they'll flip through those books instead to make reading a part of life and not a chore.
Good. That's some really good type, because I definitely would not want to bring a book. I probably would bring crayons. Not a book. Back then, I was just struggling to manage 4 of them, let alone trying to be an amazing parent. But I will say this, that books definitely do come in handy for kids. So that's an excellent tip for parents who are not inclined to do so.
Right. And crayons are great too. Coloring and crayons, my kids love to color.
Yeah.
It's just when they get lost.
Yeah. Or broken, or smeared all over the car, and in the heat they melt.
Exactly. Yep, I've had that happen too.
Yeah. I still have a red floor from a red crayon.
Oh, man. And I think it's awesome. Side note, you have 4 girls. I come from a family of 4 girls as well, and I loved it. I'm the oldest of 4 girls, and it's one of my favorite things to tell people about how wonderful it is to have 3 sisters.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad. Hopefully, all of my kids will feel the same way. There's no.
We might not now.
Fingers crossed. Well, Maria, I have had such a pleasure talking with you, and even learning myself on what I could be doing better for my kids and their literacy. And I hope that other parents feel the same way, gain some confidence from what you've taught us. And I just want to say, personally, thank you so much for being a guest on my show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kim. This has been a blast, and I love talking about literacy. I get so excited about it.
I can tell, me too. I usually read a lot, but you take it to a whole other level, so I love it because it really helps me see what I could be doing for my kids. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day. And that's the end of the episode. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe so you can be notified whenever I publish a new episode. Until next week, see ya!